Top 5 college football game enhancement measures. Welcome back to 365 Sports. This is kind of all the way in. I got to credit Andy Staples for giving me one of these ideas here.
So you're plagiarizing.
I'm not plagiarizing if you credit.
All right. Okay.
You know, you're citing. That's different.
He's good.
Yeah. But I thought, with all the clock enhancement things, I thought I would maybe put together a list of all the things they can do to not only speed up the game, but just make it better and more efficient. Number 5, this is Andy Staples, radios and helmets.
I thought they had those.
They do in the NFL. They don't in college football. And what Andy says is one of the reasons he's been given is that a lot of the helmet companies they deal with say it would void the warranty, but then on the other end of that, it's like, well, you're one of the biggest buyers, so I would think they would maybe work with you on that radio thing. And what does the NFL do? I mean, they don't void the warranty on theirs either, so just make that same kind of deal. But it would stop what I think is ridiculous of when you're at a college football game, you've got, 2 guys holding the sheet so that nobody can see it, and then you've got also I think it would be awesome if I didn't have to see a picture of like SpongeBob, Lee Corso, building blocks in a dinosaur. That's the play call. I would rather just have them call it in to the guys, and that will also speed up. Nobody has to really go over the sideline and go, what are we doing? What are we doing? The offensive coordinator or the coach can just say, 352 Snapdragon on 7, whatever it is.
Snapdragon, isn't that San Diego State Stadium?
Exactly. Maybe that's why they invented the play. But, yeah, I think that would make things a lot more seamless, and the technology exists, and believe me, they can afford it.
Yeah, there's a big article that was written on this about last spring or so that gets into some of the particulars of why it hasn't happened and like some of the players involved. But they've cited a bunch of coaches that seem to be they cited at least a couple of coaches that were definitely in favor of the idea. One of them was David Shaw, who has experience in the NFL as well, and so he's like, yeah, he would be all in favor of it. For example, I don't know really why anybody wouldn't be in favor of it, and the whole like cost thing, like spare me with the cost thing. I mean, give me a break. I understand maybe your lowest of low-level schools might not be able to swing the price tag. Okay, that's understandable, but any like school in Division I, for the most part, you think would be able to come up with some situation with a company to where they could make it happen. And there's certainly plenty of schools who don't need to be talking about prices on anything and not being able to afford stuff. Like, give me a freaking break already on that point. But, I mean, just in general, whether that's an issue or not, I just think it'd be better and smoother for the game to have that communication and, as you said, not have to rely on giant play cards, although those can be kind of humorous sometimes. And not have to resort to a lower level of communication when there's a far better level of communication that's right there and available to you. I don't know why you wouldn't want to take advantage of that.
That the NFL has been using for a long time.
Yeah.
A very long time. And here's the thing. The cost is not 80 helmets. It's probably 10 when you think about the quarterbacks and the defensive players that would have it. So you're not talking about everybody. It's just a couple guys on each team that are designated that. Number 4, one entity overseeing officials. No more Big 12, SEC, Pac-12, Sun Belt, Conference USA officials. They are NCAA officials. They all work under the same thing, and as a matter of fact, you start mixing and matching a little bit more. So you don't have an SEC crew and an ACC crew and people who are calling. I mean, no. NCAA officials. You are all college football. You're all in the same umbrella. Your conference offices, you don't have to worry about, well, our conference office review thing is here, and this one is here, and this one is here. No. It's all in the same spot. It is run out of the same place, and there's uniformity in that.
So okay, go ahead, Craig.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how you do this. I know I get the idea, and I understand that. I just don't know if conferences want to give that up.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's stupid that they wouldn't. And because then you get situations where you have different officiating leaders who emphasize things differently. I mean,
it's a different league.
Yeah, but it's the same sport. It's the same thing. They're all headed
toward the same goal. The AFC officials call it differently than the NFC officials?
For the longest of times, Baseball had the American League of umpires, and they had the National
Different
League
rules.
And
umpires,
it was, yeah.
And they finally, after 150 years, have them all under one roof. It took 150 years to get that done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the logistics of this because I think a lot of it would be like geography based as well.
Regional travel, I get it.
They try to cut costs and things like that. So I don't know how much of a factor that plays into it. But yeah, I mean, to have a uniform sort of officiating group would not be worse for the game by any means. And I think that, yeah, ultimately it probably would be better because it always is that situation where you get your bowl game and you're like, what group of officials? Oh, it's the Pac-12 cheese. You know, there's that whole thing. Or, oh, it's the Big 12 officials. Well, get ready for long video reviews 5 minutes into the game. You know, there's those stereotypes, and there's stereotypes for a reason. But, yeah, I do feel like there's clearly a difference because, again, like I just pointed out, the reactions when you see where the crew's coming from, it's like, oh, well, they call the game a certain style of way, and that really shouldn't be drastically different, even if, you know, when they're playing by mostly the same rules. I want to go back to the helmet thing, though, because I did look that back up, that story I referenced. And I guess one of the biggest barriers is actually the helmet companies. They're worried about liability.
Yeah.
Yep, the warranty thing that I just they are worried about a player because there's no unions and there's different types of helmets, and none of them are configured to have the speaker or whatever, that they're worried about a lawsuit. So that's basically the reason why we don't have that in college football.
Yeah, well, I think there's probably a way to work that out. Sounds
Really? Lawsuits?
yes. I mean, like, believe me, yes, there's a way to work that out because right now they're not trying to. So there's usually a way. Number 3, change the clock rules. We said, you know, make those clock changes that they talked about. I don't like the incomplete pass rule. I think that one's a little bit silly. I think that would wind up just like that kickoff rule. But, you know,
on the incomplete pass rule and the clock would continue to run, how many rallies or comebacks would be nullified?
Oh, I mean, tons. I mean, it would really put you behind the 8 ball because there's no benefit to, you know,
Throwing the ball.
You
have to do that to get, but yeah, I just thought about that the other day.
Okay, what's the benefit to a quarterback to throw the ball out of bounds?
Or spike it.
Or spike. I mean, like, you know, even on a play, he's not going to get sacked, just nobody's open and just need to live another day. There's no benefit to that. Now they've got to run all the way back down the field. I don't think that one will pass. I think that one's one of those, like, poison pills that's in there so that the other things that make sense pass because the NCAA wants to do this. They want it, like the conferences, they all want to change the clock rules and speed it up, but you have to have something in there that like, the coach will be like, whoa, okay, we'll do all this other stuff, but please don't take away that one. That's because that's not a rule on any other level. The NFL still has that rule. Like, why would you do that? Like, they're making it work with their stuff. You can make it work with yours. So, and we talked about that a little earlier this week. 2, find a better overtime plan. I feel like the one that they came up with to shorten it to the 2-point conversions, I don't like it. I don't like it. I'd rather them just play a 10-minute quarter and call it a day before they went to that.
To have ties?
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, no, you would not have ties. Okay.
Yeah, but then and then maybe you could go to that at the end. I don't know, but I don't like the 2-point conversion shutout or showdown. I that's not fun for me. Maybe I'm in the minority there, but I do think that they need to find a better plan for overtime.
I don't know. I'm fine with it. I haven't really given it a whole lot of thought, honestly, because I just didn't, see it all. I feel like that all that often. But I guess when I did see it, it didn't really register with me that I, wasn't in favor of it versus the old way of doing things. I mean, I think just that A&M LSU game, just forced their hand of we got to do something about it. This is ridiculous. I mean, as classic of a game as that was, it was classic because it just lasted so dadgum long and because neither team could, finish the job. But yeah, I think it's prevented that type of a situation. I think that's one of those areas that will always be up for debate, and there will always be disagreements on the best way possible of doing things. So you're never going to make everyone happy, but I'm okay with it because I do think that at some point a game's got to end. And when you're talking about a league where these aren't a bunch of guys under CBAs and all that, and you keep dragging their butts back out there for a 5th overtime to win a Week 8 game, there's got to be a limit somewhere. So,
all right,
I'm in favor of that.
I'm good either way, really, to be honest with you. But should the stats during overtime count as individual or team?
I think team. You're just running, especially when you get to that third, you're just running 2-point conversions. Like, that's not even really a thing. You're running a play to get 2 points.
Like,
right?
for example, the LSU game with A&M went like 7 overtimes or whatever. So let's say somebody throws 7 touchdown passes in overtime. They threw 5 during. Records could be broken in what is a minimal field position that other records had been set when it was a 60-minute or whatever.
I kind of agree with that.
I'm not saying that shouldn't. I've always, that's just kind of a debate that I think could be a fun one to have.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And number 1, adopt XFL/NFL replay rules. I like the way they do it in the XFL. Said it before, not too long ago. It's absolutely wonderful and efficient. And the NFL replay situations, I think you can just apply those because, give the coaches a couple challenges, review those things that need to be reviewed. But, this whole thing of like, I think we might have spotted the ball a half-yard back. We better stop this first down and 3 gain and make sure it's 2nd and 7 and not 2nd and 6.
Big
Dear
12,
God.
I promise you, no stats, no facts, no analytics, nothing. The Big 12 does that more than any conference in America, and I do watch other conference games, other conferences, and they play.
Yeah, I think the Pac-12's problem is they review the things like way too long and that they just go and go
Here's
and go.
another thing. Plays happen. Score touchdown. The replay camera's on the other end of the field, and they need to, that camera needs to go with the flow like a photographer would. But they'll score everything. Here comes a kicking team. Then they go to a replay when it seems like there could be a minute or 45 seconds and sometimes longer saved by someone making that decision sooner. Up in the booth, if we're going to wait for them, if they're going to have the ability to say, no, we need to look at that, do that quicker too.
Yeah, I don't need to know why there needs to be a guy squinting into a camera on the field when there's a room with no sunlight pouring in where somebody can just sit there and say, no, that wasn't a – I mean, what is this, like a production of something? Like, why does that guy need to go run over to the sideline, do this whole deal for 5 minutes to try and figure it out? There's nobody that can just go no, that wasn't a first down. Why are we making this so complicated?
Yeah.
I'm at home. I can look at it in 30 seconds, and I know what the call is. And 4.5 minutes later, they're still looking at this. What are you looking at? What are you possibly looking at? And if it's that hard to see, then maybe let's get them out of the sunlight on this camera they're squinting into under this, this hood apparatus. It's silly.
I'll tell you this. If you go to a game at AT&T Stadium, the officials are never more victims of their own mistakes than anywhere there because a coach can say, hey, you got that wrong. You're like, no. And then you're like, oh, how about the biggest TV in the world,
if
buddy?
You can see it that quickly, then I don't know why they can't see it that quickly.
And now you're seeing college basketball go to the to the screen, and it's just
XFL deserves credit for some tweaking of the rules, and I think that those will probably be adopted, in some form or fashion by the NFL at some point, especially being able to get the dialogue of what actually is being discussed and figure out why is it taking 3.5 minutes to, make this easy call. Well, you're at least given the opportunity to sort of understand what they're talking about. So I do like that, and that's another area where I don't know how long the league will last, but it seems like they'll leave some more marks on the game of football regardless.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Emery Winter, Gary